Hello everybody! Today I will be making my most useless video to date, but it's something that I've wanted to do since I started playing BanGDream in 2019, and it is discussing socioeconomic status in the game, well, the franchise as a whole. I've always wanted to talk about this because I always found the different room designs for everyone really interesting, because some of the girls have like intensely cool rooms and then some of the others have like just regular looking rooms. So I'm gonna be using a tier list to do this and just see where I think each girl falls in like a socioeconomic perspective. So I will be using a tier list to arrange all the girls in each tier, and I will be using the most kind of basic division of social class for this. I mean, the 1% is generally already considered upper class, but I decided to separate it into 1% upper class, upper middle class, lower middle class, and working class. And I will be basing this off of, like I mentioned, like things in the girls' rooms, and also things that we know about them from like the stories, etc., and the anime a little bit. And I will not be doing Morphonica because I don't know enough about them to arrange them yet. But I mean, they all go to like super rich private school, so I think everyone except Mashiro in Morphonica, it would probably be like upper class or upper middle class. So yeah, let's get started. I'm gonna be using pictures and I'm gonna be doing it in the order of the pictures that I have. So let's begin with this. Now, I've never been clear if this is Ako's room or like the Udagawa residence living room, but either way, I think it's very obvious that both Ako and Tomoe are very well off. As you can see, like, this living room is huge. For the most part, housing in Japan is fairly small. I would say, like, it's very different from like, I don't know, somewhere like the States where rich people tend to live in really big houses. In places like Japan, of course, like rich people live in bigger houses than the usual, but I would say that because most rich people live like in cities and stuff, their housing is fairly small compared to like somewhere like in the States, or yeah, stuff like that. Well, it depends on where you live in the States, but yeah, it all varies. But I would say like for a Japanese home, this room looks very big. We have other indicators of like the quality. Number one, it's very like it's actually decorated. Like it looks like someone who does interior design decorated this house. The windows are giant, like top to bottom windows. That's not a lot of like not rich people have that. We can see that they probably have like a really big flat screen TV. They have the sound system that also looks super expensive. 3 monitors for Ako to play video games on, and yeah, overall it just looks like an extremely kind of like rich house. Tomoe's room is this one, and it has the same checkered pattern floor, and it looks a little bit less high-end, I would say, than the living room. But judging from that living room alone, and here we can see like several things that look kind of expensive, like the sound system, for example. The headphones look like they could be quite expensive as well. We don't know the material of this bed too. Is it real wood or is it plywood? Like, we don't know. Is plywood real wood? I don't know. But overall, I think that the Udagawas look like, to me, they are upper class. I mean, that living room looks intense. I would say they are upper class. And the fact that both of them have like a music education, that could also indicate, you know, like extra money spent on going to school for drumming. So to me, I think the Udagawas are quite loaded, and I will put them in upper class. Okay, next up we have Arisa. So Arisa obviously lives with her grandmother, and they seem to own quite a big house. So the Ryusedo operates as like a pawn shop, not a pawn shop, like a used stuff store, but it seems like it's high-end stuff. And the house seems fairly large, but I mean, it's probably like inherited, like it's probably been in Arisa's family for quite a few generations. So I do think that Arisa, this is Arisa's room, I do think that Arisa is probably rich, but I think the biggest indicator why she's rich is that her hobby is bonsai, and bonsai is super expensive. I would say it's like if you get high quality bonsai, and I think Arisa does like that because she even sells one of her bonsai to buy a keyboard, right? I think she sells one of her bonsai to buy a guitar, which I don't think like that they, well, I don't know what brand she bought, but I mean they can range in price, but the fact that bonsai is her hobby, that's just a big indicator that she is definitely not middle class, at least. And yeah, the fact that her house is huge, like they have a shop inside of the house, they have the Random Star, which also seems like quite an expensive guitar. It seems like they have like a bunch of things that are quite expensive. So I'm gonna say that Arisa 2 is upper class. Okay, next we have Yukina's room. I actually think Yukina's room looks very regular, like a perfectly kind of like middle class Japanese home, maybe a little bit bigger than regular, but it doesn't strike me as like especially affluent. The one thing that is an indicator to me that Yukina might be like a little bit higher from middle class is her dad. The fact that he was in what is considered to be a successful band, and they actually had like successful songs, which to me indicates that he probably still makes royalties off of those songs, or he probably still like works in music and still makes a stream of income off that. There's nothing like in her room that indicates to me that she would be like specifically rich. I mean, those like LPs might be expensive considering that her dad is in music and she herself loves music, so they might be very expensive, and her sound system also looks quite expensive. But I don't think that her dad is, yeah, since her dad's music career didn't continue forever, I don't think that she is like too rich, and she doesn't act specifically rich or anything. So I'm gonna say that Yukina is upper middle class. Definitely not middle class, but upper middle class and not high class. Let's put her there. Okay, so next we have Chisato's room. So looking at Chisato's room, I wouldn't think of someone who's like especially affluent. It looks quite regular. I mean, it's a nice house, but there's nothing that indicates to me that she comes from like an especially rich family. But considering that Chisato has been working in the entertainment industry since she was a child, and she has considerable fame, she might be a little bit upper class. But as we know, the entertainment industry in Japan, especially when it comes to like idols and stuff, tends to exploit its workers, much like the K-pop industry, for example. So it's not a guarantee that Chisato would have made a buttload of money out of her, operations as a child actress, but she strikes me of coming from a family too that wouldn't waste money, or like wouldn't use money to buy like a particularly large house, or she wouldn't use her money on like frivolous things. The other thing that indicates kind of like a higher socioeconomic status for me for Chisato is that she has a big dog. So she would need a house that either has like a big yard for that dog or a big enough house for that dog to live in, because usually people that live in like apartments or smaller houses tend to have smaller dogs because you can't have like a huge dog in that house. But she does have a really big dog. So I feel like because she is in the entertainment industry, and because she has like a big dog, and because she seems to come from like a very responsible family, she strikes me as someone very responsible. I would say that she's probably upper middle class as well, but definitely not upper class. Like, I don't think that Paspare is paying her that much. So, but is she less rich than Tomoe and Ako and Arisa? I feel like she isn't rich. Like, it just strikes me like that. I would say she's upper middle class. Next we have Rinko. So Rinko's room, okay, Rinko has a freaking like grand piano. Is this a grand piano? I'm not entirely sure if this is specifically a grand piano, but she has a freaking grand piano looking thing in her room. And since Rinko is like a competitive piano player and has been playing since she was a child, I highly doubt that this is a cheap piano. So just that is like, okay, she's probably rich. Number two, her room looks gigantic. I mean, the fact that she has a piano and space for the desk, and we can't even see the bed in this illustration, indicates to me that her room is giant, and probably the rest of her house as well. She also has like the 2-monitor setup for playing video games. She has like the headphones and everything. And Rinko is usually, well, she makes costumes, and it always seems like she just makes the costumes from her own pocket, and she just makes like clothes as a hobby. So she obviously has money to invest in fabric, which can also get very expensive. I think that she's always really well dressed, which also indicates that to me, and she's very polite, which there's no really, like, I wouldn't say there's a correlation between like being polite and educated and your socioeconomic status. I mean, there is a correlation, but it doesn't automatically mean you're polite if you are like rich, obviously not. But Rinko looks like she was raised in kind of like an environment that really cared about, you know, art and like manners and shit, which is usually like an opportunity that people in higher economic statuses can afford because they don't have to worry about shit like what they're gonna eat tomorrow. So yeah, she just strikes me as that kind of person. And I don't know if I would say that she's like upper class, because her house, I mean, I feel like I don't know enough about it, but like her house looks super nice, and she has a freaking piano, and she's been learning piano since she was a child, which is also expensive. I'm not sure. I feel like upper middle class for Rinko. I wouldn't say she's completely upper class. I mean, with the piano in the room, I'm sorry, the piano in the room just to me is like an upper class thing. I think I have to put her in upper class. Yeah, she just strikes me, no, upper class, not upper middle class. Yeah, she just strikes me like that. That room is insane. Okay, next we have Kasumi. So Kasumi's room looks like she hasn't changed it since she was a child. It's very cute. I think Kasumi is definitely like middle class. I don't think her family has like, I don't think there's been any indicators that she has like an especially affluent family or anything. This is a very simple room. It's like a very regular size. There's no like, no frills, no expensive looking decorations. There's been like, you can see her living room and stuff in the anime sometimes, and it just looks, you know, like the average Japanese home. When the random star thing happened, it's not like she could automatically just buy it from Arisa. She doesn't have a part-time job or anything, so I think it's very kind of like evident to me that Kasumi is just like middle class, which makes sense because she's a protagonist, so usually protagonists are like neutral in every way. So yeah, I would say Kasumi is middle class. Next we have Kaoru. Kaoru has a very nice room as well. Kaoru, I don't know, she's friends with Chisato, so maybe like same social strata, I don't know. She, like, this room is very nicely decorated. She has a TV. The furniture looks expensive. She also has like a nice balcony. To me, I'm not sure. I don't know enough about Kaoru. Like, nothing in her stories as well shows that she would be like richer or poorer than any of the other characters. Maybe I would say this room though, it's like super nice. Like, I think this room to me is like upper middle class, definitely not middle class. So based on the room alone and nothing else, I'm gonna say that Kaoru is upper middle class. Okay, next we have Hagumi. So Hagumi has the butcher store and the koroke store, but she also has like siblings, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so they own like a couple of businesses. She has a brother and they do sports and stuff. Her parents sound like a little bit stuck up, like she has an unstable family life, which isn't necessarily an indicator of her socioeconomic status. But I don't know, I feel like shops like butcher shops and maybe the koroke stand, I feel like they maybe aren't enough for them to be like upper middle class. Like I feel like these businesses, you know, they break even, they generate a bit of profit, but it's not necessarily like a crazy amount of profit. So I'm gonna say that Hagu is also middle class. Next we have Kokoro. Kokoro is obviously a 1%er. I mean, she doesn't even live in like a mansion. She lives in a castle. She has like bodyguards at her disposal 24 hours a day who do everything they have. She has helicopters. She has a giant cruise ship or a yacht or whatever. She is definitely affluent 1%er. I mean, look at her room, it's insanity, and she gets everything that she wants. So I don't think we even have to debate this. Kokoro is definitely a 1%er through and through, but at least her attitude is not. I think she's definitely delusional, but she's not like mean. Next we have Saya's room. Saya is also part of like her parents own a bakery, and her room, as you can see, has like no frills, very kind of like just a regular room. It doesn't have any fancy decorations or anything. And Saya also has 2 siblings. So, and she works at the bakery, which indicates to me that although it does generate profit, it doesn't generate enough profit that they hire someone to work at the bakery that isn't Saya. So I'm gonna say that Saya as well, just like Kasumi and Hagu, is middle class. Okay, next we have Tsugimi's room. This also looks a bit bigger than Saya and Kasumi's room as well. It looks very nice. She has a lot of toys, a lot of decorations. She doesn't have a TV or anything, but that might not be an indicator of her socioeconomic status. Of course, Tsugumi's family has the coffee shop. And although Tsugu does work in the coffee shop, they also have other employees. So Eve works in the coffee shop as well. So that indicates to me that they do have enough profit to hire someone outside of the family. And coffee shops, because of their like inflated prices, I would say, well, I don't know anything about this, so don't take my words like 100% because I'm not exactly, like I don't have the sources about the difference between a butcher shop and a coffee shop. But I feel like the profit margin for coffee might be higher than that of like a butcher shop or a koroke store. So I'm gonna say that Hagumi, based on her room and because of the coffee shop, I'm gonna say she might be upper middle class, not just middle class. I don't know, maybe she would be middle class, but I'm gonna say she's upper middle class. The next room that we have is Mocha's. So Mocha has one of the smaller rooms in the game. As you can see, like compared to some of the other rooms that we've seen, like Rinko's room or Kaoru's room, it's quite small. She doesn't have a big closet. The desk and the bed are very close together. And she has like just a TV and the table very close to the TV. So yeah, I think Mocha is definitely like middle class. She works at a convenience store, so she has a part-time job. That might not be an indicator of her socioeconomic status, but I think in this case, based on the room, it is quite obvious that Mocha is indeed middle class. She does buy a lot of manga and stuff, but manga isn't specifically super expensive, and I do think that she probably has the job to sustain that spending. So I'm gonna say that Mocha as well is middle class. Maybe lower middle class, but I'm gonna say middle class. Okay, next, this isn't a picture of Roka's room, but I'm gonna say that Roka is living in her aunt's bathhouse, and although this is a luxury bathhouse, the fact that her parents would allow her to study away from her hometown and not pay for like an apartment for her or a house for her, and instead are having her stay with a relative and work, like she's staying at the relative's house to work, with the relative, right? And in the anime, we see that her house is like fairly cold. She's living like in the garage or like a storage room. So to me, that indicates that Roka's family doesn't have enough money to either give her her own apartment or just arrange for nicer accommodation for her. So I'm gonna say that Roka is probably, I don't know, even lower middle class. Maybe she's like lower middle class back at home, and definitely working class in the town that they live in. I don't even know what the hell the town is called in BanGDream, but I'm gonna say she's lower middle class based on her family, because her family probably does send her money, but just based on the fact that they're making her live in like that storage room and not in an actual kind of like apartment or dorm or something, it indicates to me that they might not have a lot of money, and that is why she is living in those circumstances. So I'm gonna say that Roka is lower middle class. Okay, next we have Eve's room. Eve's room is also not very like fancy. She does have a balcony, which is pretty nice, and the window is pretty big. I would say like the crown molding of the room is also quite unique for Japanese architecture, kind of like for regular houses. What gives away to me that that Eve might be very well off is just that she did move to Japan from Finland. Finland as a whole has like a very high standard of living. I think in the story where they go to Kokoro's cottage, she mentions that she has something like that in Finland. And I know that that's fairly common in Finland, so it might not be necessarily like an indicator of her socioeconomic status, but I would say that Eve is probably like definitely higher than middle class, and she is a model, so she probably makes quite a lot of money. Not quite a lot of money, but like some money of that. She also has like hobbies that could be considered like expensive, like tea like tea ceremonies and like kendo and stuff like that. So I'm gonna say that Eve is definitely, I don't know if she's upper class. I'm gonna say that she's upper middle class. Okay, I'm using this picture for Muskie. So Muskie, I would say, is definitely upper class. Why? Because her dad not only owns Galaxy, I'm pretty sure he also owns the market right next to Galaxy. And I forget if he also owns that ramen shop that Muskie kind of works at sometimes. Or if Muskie was just there because she was friends with the owner. I don't remember that properly. But just the fact that the dad owns two businesses in what is considered like a fairly big city. Muskie also has a motorcycle of her own, and she goes to an expensive school. So Muskie definitely, undoubtedly, is upper class. I have no doubts about that. Next we have Tai. So Tai's house to me looks very nice, and Tai's mom especially. So unfortunately my camera cut off, so I don't have the rest of the video footage for this. But basically I just explained that due to Tai's house, and I just feel like her mom has like super rich woman vibes. I would say that Tai is also upper middle class, because the fact that she has so many animals and can afford to take care of them, and mostly because of her mom, I think that she is upper middle class. And next I covered Maya, and I discussed that Maya's house looks super tall. Number one, like high ceilings. If you see like the proportion from the TV to the ceiling, it's gigantic. Not only that, but it looks like professionally decorated. And Maya loves tech and like music gear, which is also very, very expensive. But based on the architecture and decoration of her home alone, I categorized Maya as being in the upper class, just because I think that homes with high ceilings can be very, very expensive, and her room just looks like she definitely comes from a rich family. Yeah, so I think the biggest indicator to me that she might be kind of like in a higher socioeconomic class is that she does flower arranging, and so does her dad. And her dad seems pretty adamant about it. So I think flower arranging would be an expensive field or a job or hobby because flowers are very expensive. So I'm gonna say that Ran is probably upper middle class. I'm not gonna say upper class because her room doesn't look that fancy, but I would say she is upper middle class. Okay, next we have Sayo's room, and obviously like Sayo and Hina are gonna be hand in hand. So Sayo and Hina seem to also live in quite kind of like a regular bedroom. They both have learned guitar, which indicates to me that they both went to school to learn it, like took lessons for it, which can be quite expensive. But considering Sayo's very, very austere personality, could I describe it? She doesn't strike me as someone who has had excessive amounts of privilege in her life, and she's very disciplined. I mean, the opposite to Hina, but I think that based on her room and just her personality and the fact that they are like a two-sibling household, which can be very expensive, and considering what we mentioned before about Paspare probably not paying Hina incredibly well, I'm gonna say that Sayo and Hina are also middle class. It doesn't strike me like they would be like especially rich or anything. Hina works in the fast food place, right? No, she doesn't. She just goes to visit Aya. Yeah, neither of them have part-time jobs either, but yeah, they don't strike me as like particularly affluent, and I think based on the room we can see that they are definitely middle class. I think there's been times when they also show their living room, and it also just seems like a regular kind of like everyday family apartment, so I'm gonna say that they are middle class. The next bedroom is Lisa. So Lisa likes nice things, and she likes getting her nails done. Well, she can't anymore. She likes accessories. She seems to like clothes quite a lot. I would say her room doesn't look incredibly big or incredibly fancy. Like, she obviously does have some nice decorations, but those wouldn't be super costly. And Lisa does have a part-time job. She doesn't strike me as someone who would have a part-time job unless she needed the extra money. So I'm gonna say that Lisa as well is middle class. I definitely don't think that she would be upper middle or upper class. And I mean, I think they did end up nuking him, but she does have a little brother, which does increase the spending in the household. So I do think that Lisa is probably middle class, just based on the fact that she has that part-time job at the convenience store and that her room just looks, you know, like a regular room. Okay, so next we have Himari's room. So Himari's house also looks really nice. She also has quite a sizable room, very nicely decorated. She has like the tiramisu, donut, and macaron pillows. That's very, very cute. And I would say that Himari has a very... I don't take this as a negative thing. I love Himari. She's one of my favorite characters. But I think she does act quite spoiled and quite kind of like carefree, I would say. And that's, I think, a carefreeness that only comes from privilege. So I'm gonna say that based on the room and her attitude to life, she definitely is like in the upper class, and she also always seems to have free time on hand. So I'm gonna say that she probably is also, I wouldn't say upper class, but I'm gonna say upper middle class, because that room is super nice. So I will say that she's probably upper middle class. And lastly, for the rooms, we have Dimi. So Dimi has a sister, but she doesn't live here anymore. This is quite like I would say like a small size for two people. She has like the oh my god, what do you call the litera? I forgot the name in English. but those beds, the one like one on top of the other, this is quite a nice room. But I think for two siblings, like if they were a rich family, they would definitely at least each have like a separate bed. I don't think they would have this this kind of bed. I forgot the name of this in English. I think the room looks a little bit different in the anime, but it still looks very small. I think it looks even smaller in the anime. And the fact that they both learn an instrument and stuff indicates to me that they also have like money for the both of them to take lessons. And also I'm assuming that now that her sister is studying abroad, I doubt that she paid for that by herself. So I'm gonna say that Dimi's family is probably upper middle class, but doesn't act like it. Like they're very like well-grounded upper middle class. But I do think that the fact that her sister is studying abroad, the fact that they both have musical education, indicates to me that she is not just middle class. I know that Sayo and Hina are also like siblings and living in the same house, but just the fact that she's going abroad to study to me indicates that she might be a little bit more well off than those in the tier of middle class. So that is all I have in terms of like pictures, but I want to finish tiering the rest of the girls aside from Morphonica, like I mentioned. So an obvious choice that we have here is Chuchu. So Chuchu is obviously also a 1%er. She owns a freaking like skyscraper. She has like a she has a butler in the form of Pareo, and she also has a recording studio in her house. She definitely is incredibly well off, and I think Chuchu is definitely like beyond rich. We also know from her background that she also had a very like formal musical education. Her parents are musicians as well, I forget. But yeah, she's definitely super well off, so Chuchu is also a 1%er. Another person whose room we did see in the anime is Pareo, and she also seemed to just live in like a quite regular house. From what I remember, she lives kind of like far away from her school, which indicates to me that she might live like in the countryside and not super close to like a city center, which indicates that her house might be a little bit cheaper. But I'm gonna say that Pareo as well is just middle class. And we also saw that like she only started dressing like Pareo when Chuchu started giving her her clothes. So that indicates to me that she always had that wish to dress like that, but she probably couldn't afford it, couldn't have the financial freedom to do that on her own. So now that Chuchu gave her clothes, she's able to do that. So I'm gonna say that she is middle class. I think we've also seen Aya's room before, and it didn't strike me as particularly rich. I think Aya as well has a very like humble personality and a down-to-earth personality, and I don't think that her activities with the agency have been paying her particularly well. So I'm gonna say that Aya too is just middle class. We also don't have that much information about Rei. I would say that she's been doing support work for bands, but she's very young. I don't know, I'm not sure about Rei. Like, I'm just gonna say middle class because I don't know. I don't know what she would be. I don't have enough background. She also doesn't seem like incredibly amazed by Chuchu's like richness, which might indicate to me that she's like a little bit higher than middle class. But I don't know, I'm just gonna put her in middle class. And I think the same goes for Misaki. From what we know of the stories and of her family, she also has a bunch of siblings. She probably is middle class, just because having a big family is very costly, and she does have a big family, so I think she is probably middle class. And finally, Kanon is someone who I feel like we haven't seen much of. I don't think they've ever shown her room or anything in the game. She also seems to have a lot of free time, just like Himari. And I don't know, I think she strikes me like she would be upper middle class, but since I don't know, I'm gonna say she is middle class. Okay, so that is the end of my incredibly pointless ranking of socioeconomic status in BanGDream. Let me know what you think of my assessment if you watched this video until the end, and let me know if you think I got some people wrong and where you think they would fall into this in this chart. I just think that, like, based on their rooms, it's like so interesting that they each have very distinct things that makes it like it tells you who they are as a character without describing it explicitly, which I really like, and it's something that you can definitely communicate through art. So yeah, I have always wanted to do this, and I figured I would do it now. So I hope you enjoyed this incredibly long and pointless video, but I was very amused by it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye!